Hi, everyone, and welcome to B'nai B'rith International's Diplomatic Encounter Series. I will now give the floor to our CEO, Dan Mariashin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to today's conversation, the latest virtual installment of the B'nai B'rith Diplomatic Encounter Series. We appreciate all of you joining us today from around the globe. Last month marked the start of Slovenia's presidency of the European Union Council, a rotating 6-month position that Slovenia now holds for just the second time in its 30-year history of independence. The Slovenian presidency occurs at a momentous time as countries on both sides of the Atlantic continue to deal with the social, economic, and political consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're fortunate to be joined today by His Excellency Tone Kajzer, Ambassador of the Republic of Slovenia to the United States. Ambassador Kajzer is an economist and career diplomat who, until last fall, served as State Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before leaving that position to take over as ambassador in Washington. The ambassador and I will speak about Slovenia's EU Council leadership, relations between Slovenia and the United States, and the country's relationship with Israel, as well as its own Jewish community. Mr. Ambassador, welcome and congratulations on the Slovenian presidency of the Council of the European Union.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marskin, for this opportunity. I'm really happy to be here with you and to discuss those very important matters of our common interest. And thank you for this congratulation. It's not much, it's just work, as we say here on this side. But the Slovenian presidency, I have to say, started smoothly. We took over from our Portuguese colleagues, talking about the modalities. Now it's slightly different, as it was the first time back in 2008 when we, for the first time, had a presidency of the EU. We have concluded the Lisbon Treaty, so now the EU institutions are also playing very important roles. So here in the US in particular, I'm working very closely together with our EU ambassador, former Greek foreign minister Stavros Lambrinidis. Things are moving, and I have to say that one of the priorities, if I may immediately jump to the priorities to be in the position that later on we can discuss, we are still dealing with this pandemics. We have discussed just a moment ago how the things are moving, and we have to stay in a way optimistic, but the situation is still worrying. So we have to be cautious. And one of the, of course, Slovenia's very important priorities is to build on the resilience and to deal with this pandemic. So the most important thing is now that the vaccination is actually continuing and that we are successfully bringing the economy back, because closing the economy, there are many other effects, of course, socio-economical, also effects on the population mental status. But the economy has to run, because if we don't have a functioning economy, then other things will be very, very difficult to move forward. So resilience is one of and the slogan actually goes together, resilient Europe. So I mentioned resilience, working now to somehow combat further this pandemics. And then, as you all know, the situation in the European Union is quite dynamic, if I can put it like this. One of the members, United Kingdom, decided to leave. That's the first time in the history of this very successful project that one of the countries decided to leave. So we are going to concentrate also on the future of Europe. There is this conference which is beginning. We will hand it over to the French. And in particular, in this regard, Slovenia will pay attention that the process of enlargement will stay alive. We all know about the region called Western Balkans. That's further down south from Slovenia, which is actually going through a turbulent time. So in October this year, Slovenian presidency will be organizing a summit, EU Western Balkans. Then in particular, we all know that the digitalization is now the process which is actually getting into all the layers of our society. So to have a safe digital transition, we need to have a safe cyber environment. So the cyber security is also very, very important topic for our presidency. And in this regard, I have to commend really good cooperation with the State of Israel. We spoke before, and we can maybe later on continue when we talk about the bilateral relations. But in this regard, of course, the cooperation with the United States of America, where I live now and work, is very, very important. So we are actually working very closely with all the stakeholders here, including the administration, plus the Congress and other stakeholders, which are playing very important role in this regard in the United States. So maybe this is for the beginning, and we can then go into the details. We had a quite successful summit. You most probably actually have been following in June, EU, United States. So we are now looking forward to have the follow-up. One of the great achievements was establishment of the Trade and Technology Council, which will have the first meeting, I believe, in the end of September. There will be more than 10 working groups working on the particular issues, and we are really much looking forward to further develop transatlantic relations during our presidency.
Well, I'd like to go back, if I could, to the two issues that you started with. One is the COVID issue, and then the economic impact issue of COVID. Now, in terms of the vaccine itself and how does that work? I know that each individual country has its own public health system, and it has a certain amount of sway in terms of how it approaches this terrible challenge. But as you look at it for Europe, what is it that you discuss amongst your colleagues, and you will be discussing, now that we have the Delta variant and who knows what variants will follow? As the EU, how do you approach the public health issue?
Yeah, that's really very significant question. We were not aware of it before the pandemic came. And last year in March, I remember when our previous government stepped down, when the pandemics actually swirled through Slovenia, we were actually empty. Our warehouses were empty. We didn't have any protection masks, other equipment devices, and there was the huge race. And then all of a sudden, we all discovered that those things are being produced in China. So you remember at the time when our prime minister said we have actually moved back to the medieval times. So they were seizing the equipment at the airports and. But since then, we have learned the lesson, and the European Union is now functioning better. As you mentioned, of course, we have different health systems, but regarding this particular matter concerned the pandemics and the vaccines and the supply of vaccines, it's very, very good coordination now at the European level. So vaccination is now going very well. I have mentioned we have different percentages because here it is an issue that a part of population is actually still skeptical, but we think not only that the government think, and I think it's a common sense that this vaccination should go on. And regarding now, as we spoke, how are we coordinating this at the EU level? We are issuing now vaccination certificates, so to say that the crossing the borders will be smooth. So that this is not going to impose another obstacle in cooperation. You know that the tourism, for example, is very, very important economic issue, and the movement of people, because the European Union, actually the idea of European Union is based on the free movement. So since last year, we have learned a lot, but we still have to learn a lot. And this is like a process of learning. But I can optimistically say that the things are functioning much, much better, but not in the direction that we would have a unified European health system. This is rather not the case, and it won't be, because we are different. We are 27 EU members, but the good cooperation in this field, it is significant. So the production of the vaccine, also the production of some other devices which are needed for combating the pandemics, which some people are saying we can expect in the future, is going very well.
Well, let's talk about tourism for a minute. And this would be a Slovenia-specific question because the tourism sector is such a large part of your economy. Now we're in the second year, at least in terms of the summer season. You also have winter tourism, of course, but we're in the big tourism season right now. How is Slovenia handling that in terms of tourism, the hotel industry, the hospitality industry writ large?
Yeah, it's a good question. That was actually discussed, I think, at the first session of the new government, which took oath last. It was I remember because I was part of the team serving as the state secretary at the foreign ministry. It was the 13th of March. Government actually passed from March last year 9 different packages to support, to stabilize the economy. And one of the packages actually also brought so-called vouchers. We call them vouchers, so that the people, they have got the vouchers to be used in the Slovenian tourist industry. And last year, actually, it was quite surprisingly good, because that was in parallel with the European process, where at the EU level there was quite a massive program and the financial fund established for the recovery of the EU member states. But the tourism in Slovenia, I have to say, didn't suffer so much. Hospitality industry was going very well. So the overall drop, we are actually now looking at the economic figures. Unemployment in Slovenia, we are one of the least, with the lowest rate of unemployment among the EU member states. We are immediately behind, I think, Poland and Denmark and those countries. So tourism as such is functioning. And I know we had a lot of conversation, in particular talking about Israel, because we very value the guests from Israel. They like Slovenia as a natural environment. We say we are the only country in the world with the word love in its name, but we have a lot of forests and beautiful resorts. So answering your question, we are looking very optimistically, but of course with certain caution regarding this new variant of the coronavirus.
Let's talk, if I can move to bilateral relations, Slovenia-American relations. What can you tell us about the state of that relationship, and what do you see going forward?
Yes, the relations with the United States is for Slovenia as a close ally in NATO, and supporting the transatlantic relations, one of the most important relations we have. So I have to say that, but not in particular, of course, we were. I think Slovenia was one of the rare countries after the fall of the Berlin Wall and getting our independence. This year we are actually marking 30 years that we took a really solid decision at the referendum to join the NATO as well as EU. So relations with the United States, talking politically, are really, really good. We had a visit of the Secretary Pompeo last year in December. I was actually part of the delegation last year, in August. In December, my minister, then it was a return visit. We have signed really a new chapter of cooperation regarding the memorandum of understanding on cooperation on the civil nuclear energy program. You know that we have a nuclear power plant in Slovenia, and we see nuclear energy as very green energy, which will serve now in this transition period. And we have also very close cooperation in the field of cybersecurity and 5G protection. So, and just recently we had a military and political consultation. So I have to say that relations are going very well. And I'm, as you mentioned before, I'm an economist. I always look at the figures, and here we have to do more. And I'm not pushing, and I'm actually encouraging my team here and also back in Slovenia to do more to get the figures more than 1.5 billion US of exchange. If we are looking at the situation now that the US are only the 21st trade partner for Slovenia, we can do and we will do better. But I'm an optimist.
I want to turn now to an issue that's very important to us. The Slovenian government has asserted that nearly all of Slovenia's Holocaust era restitution claims have been closed, but most such claims are classified really as heirless property. There are no heirs because families were killed, for which there is no legal provision in Slovenia for restitution or compensation. And B'nai B'rith has played an important role in the negotiations with Slovenia through the World Jewish Restitution Organization, of which we are a member. What can be done to address the problem of heirless properties in the country and to move this issue of restitution claims to a resolution?
Yes, it's a very important issue. I actually, before this conversation, I had a conversation with our Ministry of Justice because they are actually in charge for this, and the government is actually expecting the report. For those listeners who doesn't know, there are two actually commissions working to bring the report on the table, and I was assured by our Ministry of Justice that the part of commission they have actually appointed back in, I think, in 2018. Because it was expected that those two commissions will finish the work till the end of 2018. And I was asking myself, why is taking so long with those commissions, of course. And I was wondering if there is something behind, you know, as Winston Churchill said, there is always something behind. But obviously in this particular case, there is nothing behind, and the things are now moving forward. We just recently we have got a new Minister of Justice, and I have got assurances from our Ministry of Justice, and as well as I'm in contact with our Prime Minister's office and Foreign Ministry, that this shall be finished. We are now 21. As soon as the report is going to be delivered from the both sides, and obviously there are some backlags on the side of the WARO. The government will actually observe this, and it will take the decision as it was initially claimed. You remember when the whole process started, the expectations, so that the heirs would be, I mean, that those matters would be actually settled in an equitable way, in the proper way, and that of course the Jewish community we cherish very much in Slovenia would prosper further.
Well, it's important that it be resolved because these discussions have been going on for some time, and the Jewish population of Slovenia in 1940 really was relatively small relative to some of your neighbors. So the property issues, hopefully through this research process, will bring us to a point where we can finally resolve it, and we hope that'll come soon. Yeah. I want to ask you another question that is important to us as well. Slovenia is a member of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IRA, as we call it. What is Slovenia doing to promote Holocaust education and remembrance in the country? And I say that, you know, Slovenia really deserves credit for adopting the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism, although, as you know, hatred of Jews has increased exponentially throughout Europe and elsewhere in recent years, right here in the United States. So I would ask another question as well. That is, how can Slovenia use its council presidency to encourage further action by the EU to address the problem? Because, you know, 6 months, you know, some may say, well, 6 months is a very short period of time, even though I know you probably put 2 years into preparing for it. Yeah. But on the other side of it, 6 months is a good period of time to set down some markers. So how do you see these issues rolling forward?
Yeah, this, as you mentioned, it's really very important, and of course, it's worrying. It is worrying. We are observing those issues very carefully and discussing at the relevant meetings, also at the council level, and of course, we are 27 member states, and we are each country in charge and actually taking care of the situation back home. And where we have those incidents, the countries should take the proper measures. In Slovenia, as you mentioned, I think the Jewish community enjoying a very high level of prosperity and acceptance. So we have very active Jewish community. I know many of them, but at the EU level, this has to actually move into the direction. But there are certain autonomies, you know, in the areas like we are now discussing whether the Brussels institutions can instruct member states how to educate. You know, we have now the case, most probably you are following our neighbor in Hungary. It's about the education. It's not about the anti-Semitism, but some other things which are also relevant for the issue. But we have to do more in the field of education, and also to keep the memory and to remember those things and to confront younger generations with those things. It's actually, I was participating now just recently. There was this first Slovenian-Israeli Day of Friendship in July, and I was participating virtually. Those activities are very important, actually, to spread this relevance of information about those issues you have actually mentioned. But at the EU level, we don't have one unique instrument so that we would actually instruct, because we are 27 members. But I think all the countries are taking this very, very serious. And of course, here we are also appreciating your work together with the Israel authorities, and what Slovenia, though it's not in the competence or in the mandate of presidency, we would really wish to see that we would have EU-Israel Association Council to be convened, which was not convened for many years, as you know. But we are actually putting a very great importance on those issues, and you can trust us that we will be fairly advocating during our presidency that those issues will be on the table, and that the solutions and the positive move will be seen in practice.
Yeah, Holocaust remembrance and education research is extremely important, particularly now we're 76 years after the end of World War II.
Yep.
Europe was where the greatest crimes against the Jewish people were perpetrated. We're now 4 generations or less since the war. Memory fades. Survivors are dying, unfortunately, now at a very rapid pace because simply the biological clock runs out. So encouraging all countries within the EU, and there are some that have excellent programs, and some that are lagging behind, and some that have none, to really move ahead in terms of education. You mentioned Israel. You mentioned it a few times, and I'd like to now move to that because it's an extremely important area of growth, let's say, in terms of the relationship between the two countries. There have really been encouraging signs regarding the Slovenian-Israel bilateral relationship, particularly over the past year. I want to ask you, what can the EU and Israel do you think, to strengthen ties in the near future? And is there a role for the EU to play in continuing the positive momentum of the Abraham Accords, which has really, widened the circle of peace between Israel and its neighbors? But let's start first with the bilateral relationship that you have with Israel.
Yeah, well, for Slovenia, as I mentioned before, Israel is the most important partner in the region. And we have excellent cooperation in many different fields, as we discussed education, science, culture, youth, sport, you name it. And we are expanding cooperation. You have mentioned, and I can actually confirm that we had really very successful visit of our Prime Minister to Israel. And cooperation in new sectors. I mentioned before importance of cybersecurity, also technology, innovation, artificial intelligence. We are hosting the International Research Center on the auspices of UNESCO, which is dealing with the artificial intelligence. So those are the areas where we see, and we are already working together. I think a memorandum of understanding is now being signed. And we, as we mentioned before, also the tourism, and there are direct air connections between Ljubljana and Tel Aviv. And we are consulting and cooperating on global issues, including the water infrastructure. I mean, the cybersecurity of critical infrastructure. That's very important. And of course, regarding the how to combat the COVID-19 pandemics. So, I can reveal that I hope very soon, in the 2 weeks, we will have the visit of our foreign minister to Israel, and I'm really looking forward to that. So the things are going very well, but we have to keep up the follow-up. You know, follow-up is always very important. What we agree, then we have to deliver, and that's, for me as an economist, very important.
One of the issues that all of us are concerned about, Europeans, Americans, is the issue of international terrorism, global terrorism, which has affected almost all of us in one way or another. And Slovenia deserves credit for banning Hezbollah in its entirety, as a small but growing number of countries have done so far. And there was, just for the purpose of context, there was the attack not that long ago, 6 years or so ago, in Burgas in Bulgaria,
yes,
by Hezbollah, where Israeli tourists and the Bulgarian bus driver were shot. Bulgaria brought the issue to the EU, and the EU at that point decided that it would bifurcate Hezbollah, and there would be a military wing and a political wing.
Yeah.
So the military wing was censured, but the political wing was not. And now countries are taking another look at that, because Hezbollah, truthfully, Hezbollah doesn't really care. Hezbollah is one organization. The money is fungible. Yes. And they are a terrorist organization. And it's gratifying to see that your country and several others, but more countries need to make that decision to send that message to the Iranians, who are the backers, the funders, and the armorers of Hezbollah. What do you think? Can we expect a full ban of Hezbollah by the EU in the near future?
Well, we would wish to see that, and we are working, not now publicly discussing everything, because we are in the family of 27, and it's not so easy to coordinate and to bring the one voice of 27, you know, even if you have a smaller families, making some parallels. But we have the reasons to be optimists, because the terrorism is the common issue we have to combat, and all the EU members are aware of it. If some of the countries were still skeptical, and as you mentioned before, making those divisions, political wing and military wing, I think recognizing now that we have to look at this comprehensively, like Slovenia did. And here I have to say I was part of that story. Sometimes the internal procedures, I have to tell you, are not so easy to, because you have many, I'm talking within some certain countries, how to actually come to the decision to ban, in this particular case, Hezbollah, but we did it. So I say, and you have seen the engagement of our Prime Minister, who is now actually a President of the Council, President leading the Council, and his actually condemnation of those really horrible things which happened in Iran. And he has received a lot of criticism, of course, we know from the Iranian side. But here we talk about the values. And I very much emphasize here that values which are actually bringing us together, and I'm talking about the West values of valued individual freedoms, rights, democracy, market economy. We have to actually put the emphasis on the values. We can go into the details how the things were functioning or not functioning in the last decade or so, but now we think it's time to put the values in front of other possible interests, also financial and economic. So again, I will try to conclude here that I'm an optimist. We will be working in this direction with other countries, and you can count on Slovenia.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you're celebrating your 30th anniversary of independence. Hard to believe, it's gone very quickly. You, and when I think of your EU, many of your EU member state partners, 1989, 1991, it's really gone by very quickly. So if you look back and then look forward, what have been some of your disappointments? And tell us about what you think some of the big accomplishments have been, and what do you see going forward?
Yeah,
in the next 30 years?
It's a good question. When you are celebrating those anniversaries, I always say, like at the personal level, with my lovely wife, we are now we just marked 35 years, actually more than. It's good to look back, but actually to realistically look into the future. And regarding our lovely country, Slovenia, I think we have no regrets. We have proven to those who were at the time maybe skeptical, and I will not name it, but we all know that there were some very important countries who were skeptical that in particular case Slovenia will be able to actually take care of ourselves, that we have proven in practice. We have entered the European Union. We are a credible member, I can say now, and we are actually built on that credibility, NATO ally. We have also served in the Security Council of the United Nations. So in this multilateral level, we have also embraced our responsibilities regarding the development, cooperation, and humanitarian aid. So summa summarum, looking back, we have nothing to regret. It's always possible to do certain things better, but we have to look into the future. But the future is now quite more sophisticated and with more challenges. I have mentioned before, and that's why we are actually called to work together to actually preserve and expand the area of democracy, the area of freedom, of individual rights. Actually, because the human individual is in the center of our attention. So, and in this direction we are working, but we will need to work even more closely together with the partners, actually to achieve those goals. And regarding the Europe, as I said before, there was this dream. You would remember Winston Churchill saying it: make Europe free as a whole, without boundaries. And we are still not actually there, but we can be optimists, and especially regarding the Western Balkans and other countries, not to mention the situation, for example, in Ukraine and in Belarus and in Georgia, we still have work to do together. But we have to firmly work together and actually embrace our common values. I said before, we have to put the values in front of other more particular interests we all have.
Well, we thank you for that, and we wish you the very best in the coming 6 months. We know it is not easy. There's a long agenda and a relatively short period of time to do it, and so really the best going forward to you. We've come to the end of our time. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us today. and for sharing your insights. It's been a real privilege to have you.
Thank you very much once again. It was my privilege to be with you, and I hope very soon we'll be able to sit down in person, maybe here at Washington at our embassy, and have a friendly conversation to follow up on those matters.
Well, thank you for that, and I'm sure we'll be able to do that. I want to again thank my distinguished guest, His Excellency Tone Kajzer, Ambassador of the Republic of Slovenia to the United States, for being with us today, delving into Slovenia's goals and priorities for its EU Council presidency, and much more. It's been great to moderate this forward-looking discussion with you. A recording of this conversation will be available on demand on our YouTube channel soon. And be sure to visit our website, b'nai to learn more about our organization's important work. I want also to thank all of you for joining us today, and I hope that you'll return for future installments of the B'nai B'rith Diplomatic Encounter series. Until then, take care. We look forward to seeing you again soon.